Let's discuss more now with House Democratic Leader Hakeem Jeffries. Leader Jeffries, great to see you. So Republicans say it's on Democrats to get the U.S. government back open. So what will it take to get things moving again?
Well, Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the presidency, and from the very beginning of this year, they've adopted a my way or the highway approach and continue to try and jam their right-wing ideology down the throats of the American people, including when they passed the One Big Ugly Bill, which had in it a $186 billion cut to nutritional assistance, the largest SNAP cut in American history, and they did that so they could reward their billionaire donors. Our view as Democrats is that we want to sit down with anyone, anytime, any place, either at the Capitol or back at the White House, to reopen the government, to enact a bipartisan spending agreement that actually meets the needs of the American people, while at the same time decisively addressing the Republican health care crisis that is crushing the American people.
When's the last time you or anyone has reached out to Speaker Johnson or other Republicans to say, let's sit down at the table, let's talk, whether it be on Capitol Hill or at the White House?
Well, earlier in the week, Leader Schumer and I reached out directly to the White House requesting a meeting with Donald Trump before he went back out of the country as we approached now day 26 of the Trump Republican shutdown. Of course, Donald Trump indicated he had no interest in sitting down with Democrats, and that, in fact, has been the case for the last 26 days while the government has been shut down, while services are not being provided to our taxpayers, and while hardworking federal employees are being furloughed or forced to work without pay. Donald Trump has had zero interest in spending any time to try to get a resolution. They made the decision to shut down the government, and now they are continuing to inflict pain on the American people.
Is there another way that lawmakers on Capitol Hill, both sides, all sides, can talk without the president's involvement? After all, citizens do expect that there should be negotiations, discussions when talking about legislation, bills, remedies, any or all of these things, especially with the U.S. government not in operation at stake.
Yeah, part of the problem is that House Republicans have canceled votes now for 5 consecutive weeks. They literally have been on vacation, receiving a paycheck while forcing others to work without pay. A starting point would be Speaker Johnson actually bringing House Republicans back to Congress so we can actually function as a body and work toward enacting a bipartisan resolution and a spending bill that meets the needs of the American people. Now, we've also said as House Democrats that we will consider anything in good faith that emerges from the Senate in a bipartisan way that reopens the government, that spends taxpayer dollars in a way that makes their life better, and that, of course, addresses the health care crisis, including by extending the Affordable Care Act tax credits so that tens of millions of people all across the country, everyday Americans, don't experience dramatically increased premiums, copays, and deductibles as we approach open enrollment on November 1st.
Okay. And yesterday, I spoke with Natasha Taylor. She's the deputy director of Georgia Watch. It's a nonprofit that advocates for consumers here in Georgia. And Georgia is expected to be hit pretty hard with health care, affordable health care premiums going up. On average, she says, a family of 4 might have to pay $3,000 a month for their care. But without these extensions, it could go up at least 30%, and they could be facing $6,000 to $7,000 a month for health care coverage. What do you say to families who are now in a position of having to choose between health care, food on the table, paying their rent, or even mortgage while all this is going on?
Well, this should never be the case in the United States of America, the wealthiest country in the history of the world. And as Democrats, we've made the case that we are not going to support a partisan Republican spending bill that continues to gut the health care of the American people in an environment where the cost of living in this country is already too high. Donald Trump promised to lower costs on day one. Costs haven't gone down, they're going up. Electricity bills are through the roof. Housing costs are up. Inflation is up. Grocery costs are up. And now tens of millions of people in Georgia and in beyond are facing the very real possibility that they will be unable to afford a doctor when they need one. We're talking about a situation where many people will confront increased health care costs of $1,000 to $2,000 per month. That's $12,000 to $24,000 in additional costs per year, when more than 90% of the people who receive Affordable Care Act tax credits make around $62,000 a year. It's unaffordable, it's unsustainable, and it's unconscionable. That's why we are demanding that our Republican colleagues sit back down at the table so we can get this resolved for the American people.
All right, now let me ask you about your home city. You've now endorsed Zohran Mamdani for mayor of New York. What provoked you to endorse him now?
Well, Zohran is a Democratic nominee, and there's alignment as it relates to the affordability crisis and the need to decisively deal with it. Of course, alignment around Jessica Tisch as the NYPD police commissioner and the important need to ensure public safety for all communities across the city of New York. And I was very pleased to see that our nominee, Zohran, made the decision to indicate that he would retain Jessica Tisch as the police commissioner. By all accounts, she's doing a tremendous job. And of course, there's alignment around the existential threat that Donald Trump will bring to the city of New York in ways that he's unleashed this extremism on the American people in such an extraordinary way from the very beginning of his presidency. And he clearly has put a bullseye on the city of New York. That said, I will continue to take positions that are important to the people that I'm privileged to represent in Brooklyn on racial justice, on social justice, on economic justice, and of course on foreign policy, particularly as it relates to the Middle East, which has been an issue of great interest to people, particularly over the last 2 years. I will always support Israel's right to exist as a Jewish and democratic state, an eternal homeland for the Jewish people. Of course, we have a ceasefire in place. That is a good thing. We have to make sure that it can hold permanently. We need to make sure that we identify all of the remains killed and they're returned home. We have to surge assistance, humanitarian support to Palestinian civilians who have been in harm's way through no fault of their own in a theater of war for 2 years. We have to reconstruct Gaza. And of course, finally, we need a robust path toward a just and lasting peace, which ultimately will involve a two-state solution, a safe and secure Israel living side by side in peace and prosperity with a demilitarized Palestinian state free of Hamas, but a state that allows the Palestinian people to experience the dignity and self-determination that they deserve.
And quickly, can I also ask you about your other home city of Washington, D.C. and the demolition of the East Wing? As a member of Congress for many, many years, you've obviously spent a lot of time at the White House and at the East Wing as well. What are your impressions? What are you feeling as you see the demolition taking place without the involvement of preservation groups or even Congress?
Well, the American people are understandably horrified about what they've seen in terms of the demolition of large parts of the White House so that Donald Trump can erect a ballroom to be celebrating him like a king. That's unconscionable, unacceptable, and of course it's un-American. And instead of focusing on reopening the government, instead of focusing on addressing the healthcare crisis that Republicans have visited on the American people, instead of driving down the high cost of living in an environment where the Trump tariffs have made life more expensive for everyday Americans, he's decided to destroy the White House in an unlawful way. And it is very unfortunate, but it's par for the course in terms of what we've seen from Donald Trump and Republicans during his presidency.
All right, Democratic leader, Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
test. Test. Hi. Test. Hi. Test. 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 1 2 1 2. Test.